Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith, and we're going to go over the NBA slate for Wednesday, November 20th. The goal is to help you win money. Boy, oh boy, do we hand out some nice picks yesterday, highlighted by Dalton Connect careering to cap the slate. I personally was one pick away from a takedown. And we did get some positive reviews in the comment section that some people did okay. So if you did really well, but because of anything we said, drop another comment and let us know. And if you're watching for the first time, smash that like button and consider subscribing so you get alerted to more videos just like this. It's free content. This helps us to go through our own process, but obviously the goal is to help you and just build a community together. So let's get into it. We go position by position, looking at the projections over at Roto Grinders. And the slate is starting to be pretty clear. It's looking like a Giannis slate with a ton of value. So I don't really mind, kind of playing into that and eating a lot of that chalk. We just need to find a couple of ways to get different and go from there. All right, Taylor. So at point guard, we do have SGA again. He still is a really nice price at 10.5K, coming in with a 51-point fantasy projection, best projection among point guards. He is not going to be owned. He has a really nice matchup against the Blazers. Obviously, there's blowout risk, but he looks pretty darn interesting, especially if he's not going to garner any ownership. Right behind him is James Harden, 9.6K with almost a 50-point fantasy projection. And both Dame and Steph are pushing for a 50-point fantasy projection. Harden, Curry, and Dame are all getting a little bit of ownership, all in the teens. So looking at those guys, and I guess you could throw Trae Young in there too. Are you prioritizing any of these guys? Are you getting to any one in particular over the others?
Looks like Dame is the one I have the most of as of now in that matchup against Chicago. Obviously, we like to pick on the Bulls. They had the fastest pace in the league. I'm not sure if they do still, but I'm sure they're up there. I meant to make a rule, a Giannis Dame rule, and I probably will, to not get them in the same lineup, which is probably going to push down my Dame exposure quite a bit. But I think it's viable to play them together. I'm just not super psyched about it. I think there are a lot of other point guards on this slate you can get to. I like Devin Booker a decent amount. His price has come down to 9,200. Still no KD or Beal for Phoenix. The Knicks haven't been quite as good defensively so far this season, particularly against three-point shooters. So I think Booker is the high-end point guard I might have my eye on the most.
Yeah, I do like Booker. As far as ownership goes, the projection is fine. He has not been good lately, so it's a little bit scary. So yeah, I don't know. I like Booker. There's a lot to like here. The thing is, there's other plays that I like, but I don't mind getting to any of these guys. They are all totally fine. If I'm going to prioritize one, I think it would end up being SGA as kind of a price pivot away from an expensive Giannis. And the fact that I can get SGA at under 10% ownership on the slate is pretty interesting. I do find myself getting away from this Warriors-Hawks game, which is a little bit scary because Steph is pushing 20% ownership and has a really nice projection, and he's too cheap for a matchup with the Hawks. I just feel like some of these guys here are a little bit volatile for the price. I mean, there is a lot to like. You can go down to Tyrese Halliburton at 8.3, although the matchup with Houston is not amazing. Jalen Brunson at 8.9. Like, there are a lot of options. Donovan Mitchell is one of the few Cavs studs that will be playing in this game today after playing in Boston. So he obviously could have a ton of usage and blow up here. No doubt about that. So lots to like.
The issue with that is, like, they're without Garland and a bunch of other guys, but they're playing the Pelicans, who are without everyone. Mm-hmm. So even without 5 rotation guys, the Cavs are still favored by like 15 points. So I'm bringing Mitchell's minutes projection down a little bit. I think there's a lot of blowout risk there. So he can still get there, certainly. And you never know. Like, I didn't think the Spurs would beat the Thunder last night, for example. But Mitchell is pricey, and I could see ownership kind of going to him a little bit just because Garland is out. So that's a guy I'm going to be a little bit under on and just hope that he doesn't blow up.
Yeah. And I think like looking at SGA too, for me, I mean, he's got the best projection of the position. He's got a great matchup, not owned. And then there seems to be a lot of ownership being divided among those top point guards. So I think it's a really quick way to get different. If nobody's going to play SGA, I do have a lot of interest there, but I really do not have a problem with Curry or Dame specifically. Not super interested in Harden, good projection, but I don't really like targeting guys against the Magic. Just why go out of your way to play Harden at 9.6 when you can play Curry or Dame, or just pay up a little bit more and get SGA. Love the Devin Booker call. He was one of my favorite plays going into this before I started really looking at projections and matchups and ownership. So I still like him because the usage could be there. Worth noting, though, he has not been very aggressive. Like, I don't know what his deal is, but with KD and Beal out, I don't know if defenses are keen in on him more, and it's just more difficult for him to get a shot off. But he has games where he's only shooting like 14 times and 12 times. He's just not doing it. He could always make me look stupid here. So I don't mind the play whatsoever, especially since he is projecting for no ownership. So that is interesting too. Okay, so while we can spend up a point guard, there's actually a lot to like in the value department, starting with Ty Jerome and Craig Porter Jr., because those bodies are not there for Cleveland. So how do you feel about those two guys, and what other values are you looking at point guard?
Yeah, they're very obvious. Probably don't need to spend a lot of time on them, but no Garland, no LeVert, no Okoro, no Merrill. Minutes should be available for both. They're cheap enough to where you can play them together, I think. Yeah, not a hot take.
Okay, but the Pels are also without bodies. Who do you feel the most comfortable with for New Orleans at point guard?
I guess Brandon Boston, just because he might play 40 minutes, but that's it. I know they have no one, but I just am not dying to get there. It's a bad spot. They're a bad team with a bunch of non-NBA players. He's really the only point guard you can play anyway. So probably
no, that's true. Yeah, we'll get to the other guys in a second. I mean, I don't mind those guys. They're very limited, their bodies. I think they have 9 guys, and one of them is questionable. Missy? Is it Missy or Missy?
Missy.
Okay, well, he's questionable. So if he doesn't play, then I think they only have 9 guys. So if that, or maybe even 8. So something to keep in mind for sure.
They might have Elfrid Payton, who's not in the player pool.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, well, we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, who says Elfrid Payton's going to come in and play a bunch of minutes anyways?
I assume he would play because they waived Noel, and it's a game day, so I assume he's available. But
maybe don't play Jalen Noel then.
Well, yeah, you don't play Jalen.
Well,
Noel,
I'm just saying,
on the roster.
Is there a designation in DraftKings that he is gone?
Well, I don't think people build based on DraftKings designations, so who knows?
Well, you don't know that for sure. Anyways, all right, so lots of good plays. You can keep going down in the lower mid-range too. If Tyrese Maxey remains out, Jared McCain at 6.3 is not the worst bottom mid-range play. Kobe White as a run back from the Bucks players that everybody likes. He looks okay at 6.8. Let me sort this by projection again, see who else is kind of popping. Fred VanVleet is a pretty good price against the Pacers at 7.1. I don't mind him if you land on him.
Jalen Green's questionable, so if he's out, VanVleet and Şengün are going to look better, and Amen Thompson again.
Yeah, I was already loving Şengün. That would definitely get me on Amen, and I would have interest in Fred as well for sure. I mean, Scottie Pippen Jr., the price is a bit high. I don't really like it. Memphis is another team that is really hurting. Marcus Smart is doubtful. Conchar doubtful. Vince Williams out. We know John Morant is already out. So, you can look at Memphis guys. I don't think I'm going to pay 6.9K for Scottie Pippen, but he's not out of play completely. Kason Wallace at 4.4K. He got 30 fantasy points last night. So I think he's fine for value, especially if you want to get away from some of this chalky stuff. These other guys are chalky for good reason. I really like those 2 Cavs guys, but they could bust very easily. So if you want to try to make a pivot, Kason Wallace is an option. Chris Dunn's been getting 4 minutes at 4.4K. He's all right. Anybody else standing out for you?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, truth be told, I am probably locking in both Craig Porter Jr. and Ty Jerome and not really thinking twice about it. It looks like really good chalk to me. And then I'll probably get to some Pels, but we'll get to that in a second. Over at shooting guard, you can go put Devin Booker there if you want to go eat the value at point guard. And by the way, as much as I do like SGA at being an unknown option and a pivot on those top guys, I'm first prioritizing the Cavs value personally. So if I don't get to Booker there or those other guys there, we'll just see what happens, as I go. Donovan Mitchell has a slightly better projection than Devin Booker. You're lowering his minutes because of blowout risk, but He's there. You can play him. He's coming in under 10% ownership. Zach LaVine remains a pretty good value at 7.1K, much like Kobe White. I think he's a better run back from the Bulls than Kobe White is. He is pretty appealing. Brandon Boston, just because he's going to play the whole game at 6.6K, he projects pretty well. I like him quite a bit. Not anybody else that is like a major priority up top. Do you like any other spends at shooting guard?
Sure don't. I don't think Jalen Green is a bad play at 6'3" if he's in, but we don't know yet.
All right, let's look at value here. So Antonio Reeves, 3K flat. I know you don't really want to play the Pels guys, but they are shorthanded. The Cavs are also shorthanded, so I don't really know if I fear the blowout thing that much. Like, they'll probably get their asses kicked, but are they going to lose by 40 to a shorthanded and tired Cavs team? You don't know that for sure. You don't know that for sure. They probably will. But anyways, even so, Reeves is probably going to play a good amount. He's projected for 25 minutes. For 3K flat, I think I will take on that risk. I don't mind playing him at all. And he's not even super owned right now, which is really interesting. There's also Luke Kennard, 3.6K. He should get decent run, 25 to 30 minutes with Memphis very shorthanded. Grayson Allen continues to be a pretty good value play, 4.3K, 26 to 30 minutes off the bench for him. I have no issues with him. I already spoke about Cason Wallace. I don't like playing Cason Wallace, but he's probably going to push for 30 minutes, and he's 4K. He's there. He's viable. Let's see. How do you feel about Lindy Waters III?
Why?
I don't know. He's popping. He's projecting for 24 minutes at 3.8K.
Probably not playing. They still have a lot of guys, even without Milton.
I wouldn't think so. There's something called a Jalen Tyson for the Cavs. 3K flat, projected for 19 minutes. Don't think I want to do that. I don't know. I don't really see much else here. I just really am down for the Antonio Reeves dive because he's 3K and he should play a good deal, especially with Noel gone. So how do you feel about him, and what other values do you like at shooting guard?
He's fine just because he's 3K. I don't know anything about him. He's at 0.75 points per minute on the season in a limited sample. Not a good player, it seems like, but he's 3K. If he starts, then he's a good play. I don't mind Shaden Sharp if Simons is out again. Sharp's 5'6". Good usage guy. Minutes have been up for him. He blew up in the last game when he was 4,900 for some reason. So 5'6", even in a tough matchup's not too much to pay for him in that same scenario.
No, he's totally fine. Jalen Wells is another guy I'll mention, just along with any Memphis guys that end up starting. He's only 4.9K, projected for 31 minutes and 21 fantasy points. I don't love the projection, but the price in minutes I do love. All right, over to small forward we go. This is where we can perhaps get some more value. But up top, we do have Franz Wagner, 9K with a 43-point fantasy projection, projecting for under 10% ownership. I love Franz Wagner tonight. I think you can put him in there with Giannis if you want to eat a lot of this chalk value like I am going to, or you can just pay down from Giannis and play him. Unknown Franz Wagner with the role he has right now. He's shooting like 24 times a game. He has the ball in his hands constantly. The only issue at all here would be the fact that the Clippers are not the funnest matchup on the road, but he is Orlando's offense right now with Banchero still out. So I like him a lot. Paul George at 8.1K is viable, but Tyrese Maxey might be back and Embiid is still there. So I don't really want to play Embiid on this slate. How do you feel about those guys? And is there anybody else up top like Levine or Desmond Bane that you are interested in paying for?
I like Levine quite a bit. I'm not super psyched about Bane on a back-to-back. I don't really know what they're going to do with his minutes since he's coming off an injury also, and he's been limited to begin with. So kind of paying a lot for him. Not super into that. Not into Paul George with Maxey presumably back along with Embiid. Wagner, love that. He very obvious, easy play at 9K flat. Still arguably a little too cheap. I don't mind Mikal Bridges ever in the mid-range. I think he's okay enough.
Look at that minute-to-point ratio for Mikal Bridges. 38-minute projection, 28 fantasy point projection. He's disgusting.
Projection's a little bit low, but
I would say so. Yeah, I agree.
But still, revenge also for him.
For sure. True revenge.
I think there is value. Obviously, George Niang might start for Cleveland. 4,400, path to 30 minutes. And then Jamal Cain, one of the Pelicans.
Love
3,800. hard to get away from him, assuming he starts for Ingram.
How do you feel about Lou Dort? He's getting 30-plus minutes consistently. He's hit 30 fantasy points in 3 straight games. I don't mind him in a vacuum, but I do fear that bottom floor Dort game is just right around the corner. So I'm not super eager to go play him. I just will say he's there. The Blazers are a good matchup. If the game stays close, he could be okay. You cited Amen Thompson at 5.5K earlier. He's an okay value regardless if you want to get away from the chalk. But he himself will probably be fairly owned if Jalen Green ends up being out. So he looks like a really good play. And an even better play if that ends up being the case.
I think Dort is good because Joe is out. Obviously, Chet is out for them. The minutes have been stable. There's a chance Hartenstein plays, so that is one more body in the mix they haven't had. But I don't think that would affect Dort too much. So I still think he's a pretty good value, especially with guard forward eligibility.
No, as far as the price and the minutes go, I like him a lot. What I don't like is that
he's Lou Dort.
He's Lou Dort, and he could bottom out at any point. So I don't mind if he's my last guy in. I'm just not going to really prioritize him. Dylan Brooks at 4K flat is kind of like cheaper Lou Dort on this slate. He's going to get solid minutes and even more solid minutes if Jalen Green is out. So keep him on your radar if that ends up being the case. I think he's okay against the Pacers if Jalen Green is in. I'm just not going to go out of my way to play him. Antonio Reeves, we already said he is eligible at small forward as well. You can look at the Pacers because Miles Turner, I believe, is still questionable again after missing last game. And Trace Walker is questionable now too. So I think that makes Obi Toppin a solid value play if either of those guys are out. And I'm not really seeing anybody else that feels like a must here. There's plenty of dives. It is a bigger slate. But I think we highlighted the ones that feel the best on this slate.
I think Mathurin in the same vein with Walker questionable. Like they still have all those injuries. I think he's okay. Matchup's really brutal for him though, so not super in love with it. And then Wiggins is fine. Kyle Anderson's questionable. Maybe there are a few more minutes for Wiggins if he's out. He's 5,400 against Atlanta, so pretty good spot for him too.
Yep. All right. Over to power forward we go. Giannis is the king of the slate, certainly the king of power forward. He has a projection that is 23 points higher than the next power forward, and I think he's 13 points higher than the next player on the slate. He's mega owned, pushing 40% ownership. This is like very rare for me, but I don't even care. I'm just going to play Giannis on this slate. I think you absolutely can entertain the fade. I think you can definitely drop down and go get 2 extra studs instead of Giannis because he's so expensive. He's like 12K, no, 11.5K. He's actually not as expensive as I thought he was going to be. So you can do that, and normally I would be trying to do that, but even on a big slate, I want to pay for Giannis here. The projection's too good. The matchup with the Bulls is too good. I will just kind of hope that the ownership drops a little bit, and I can benefit from that. So let's just start there, and then we'll work our way down. What are your thoughts on Giannis?
Yeah, I don't really care about the ownership. He could be 80% owned, and I would still play him a lot. Like, it's an awesome play, very obvious spot.
Yep.
No other superstars really on the slate. So last time this happened, he got us like 40. So I'm expecting that again, but we'll see what happens. I think
that's
fine.
That's just always possible. We know that. Same thing. Like, it worked out yesterday. We talked about kind of the opposite with Luka. We're like, of course, this will be the time Luka gets 90. And for a second there, it looked like he was going to. He was crushing in the first quarter and then fizzled and was like not great at the end. So that fading Luka worked out. But in this case, I just don't, I think the risk is greater to fade a 40+% owned Giannis, than to just eat the chalk and move along. Because even if he gets like 55 or 60 and doesn't truly completely nuke the slate, that's still going to put you above.
You still need raw points. So,
Exactly. So I'm just going to do it. Plus, we got all this value. Like, as long as the value isn't horrendous, paying for Giannis is not going to be crippling whatsoever. Now, if you don't want to play Giannis, and even if you are looking for other options, Franz Wagner is next up. I already talked about him. I love Franz. I'm pairing him with Giannis on this slate, not even thinking twice about it. I think his projection's too low. I think his ownership's way too low, and his usage is sky high right now. So I will say one more time, the matchup with the Clippers is not ideal, and that plays into his ownership a little bit. Plus, obviously, Giannis and all these stud point guards existing. But I love Wagner. I'm just gonna. He's probably my flag plant. I'm not gonna put Giannis as a flag plant because everybody's gonna play Giannis, and they should play Giannis. but unowned Franz Wagner to be in the hammer game to end this slate is very, very appealing to me. Then Jalen Johnson, 8.4K against the Warriors. He's interesting. He's questionable, I think, or he was. His projection is not where it had been recently, but his price has come a little bit down. I do have a little bit of interest in him just because he's $600 cheaper than Wagner, and he just keeps smashing. So he's okay. There are other guys to consider. Evan Mobley with some of those Cavs guys out. Jaren Jackson Jr. with all the Memphis guys out. What are you thinking here beyond Giannis? We already know you like Giannis.
Yeah, I like Jalen Johnson if he's in. Of course, the matchup's pretty good against Golden State. Jaren Jackson, fine. Also, Siakam, I don't mind 7,400. The matchup's pretty rough for him, but I think it's okay in a tournament at low ownership. Otherwise, besides Wagner, really just paying down for guys like Robinson Earl, George Niang, I mentioned at small forward. Javonte Green's 5K, but they have minutes to go around there. I think that's fine as well.
Yeah, I like the Javonte Green call. He's ticking up a little bit at 5K, but I'm okay with it. Niang at 4.4 is fine. Robert Williams at 4.4 looks okay. Robinson Earl, you said. Jake LaRavia at 4.5K with Memphis kind of shorthanded. I do prefer to go with the guys who start in these games, but because there's blowout risk, I don't even think it really matters that much, and the rotations are going to be pretty tight with the lack of bodies. So you can really consider any of those guys I just mentioned. I think that's I'm assuming Nurkic is back, right? If Nurkic is back, we can forget about Mason Plumlee and Idegoro, but if he's out for whatever reason, both those guys would look pretty appealing, I think. I think he's back, though. It looks like, the projections are shaping up that way. Okay, so that's going to do it for power forward. Let's wrap it up at center.
He's questionable for what it's worth.
What's that?
Nurkic is questionable.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, if Nurkic is out, Mason Plumlee looks good. He's still only 4.8K, I think. And then Idegoro would also have a role. He had like 30 fantasy points in the last game, so he'd look good too. So keep an eye on Nurkic's status. Or since it's the second to last game of the slate, maybe just kind of play for that and like to use one of those guys and just have a backup plan in case it doesn't work out. We already talked about Giannis. Cat, again, looks amazing at 9.4K. I think this is going to be interesting because obviously you can use Giannis at power forward, and that's what I'm going to plan on doing. And then at center, you can just kind of pick which guy you want to roll with. Right now, my favorite play at center, Giannis not included, is Şengün. The matchup with the Pacers is nice. He projects really well. His price has come down. He looks awesome. He's my preferred play, but I do not blame anybody who wants to go pay up for a Cat, especially since he's going to be half the ownership of Şengün. And Jalen Williams at 8.5K coming off a really nice game last night. He looks really good still, not expensive enough at 8.5K. I'm sure you're pretty aligned with that logic. If you have any different take on those players, give it up, and then go ahead and talk about whoever else you like up top at center.
Yeah, I don't really have anything different. I think Towns is the one I like the most against Phoenix. Good spot for them. They're favored on the road. Şengün, it is a good matchup for him. Miles Turner, if he's in, is okay at 6'8", just based on the role. If he's out, it'll be Obi Toppin again, I assume, as the value. They started Enrique Freeman, but Toppin was the one that got most of the minutes in the last game. I think that's the guy you're playing. Guys like Vooch and Embiid, if you want to include him, or just like pure dart throws on this slate. I don't mind Brandon Clark as a punt. It didn't quite work out last night because he didn't get a lot of fourth quarter run, but he was smashing at halftime. Edey's not going to play again tonight. Memphis has injury issues. Sub 4K starter, I think, is worth a shout. There is some foul risk, of course, against Embiid, but you never know. I don't hate that value. Jalen Smith, kind of in the same vein, just a guy who's going to be on the floor a little bit and a good per minute guy historically.
Yeah, I mentioned Robert Williams. He's getting 25 plus minutes a game right now, and we know he can do a lot when he's out there. He is definitely viable. Another guy, same team, Don McClingan, with only 4.5K price tag. He had 50 fantasy points 2 games ago. Not like the matchup with OKC is fun, and good luck picking which one of these guys ends up hitting, but I think they both look fine as value plays. As far as other value, don't think anybody else feels amazing that we haven't already touched on. Yeah. Well, Wendell Carter is out, so you can look at the Magic guys, but they're not quite as cheap as we might want them to be. Wagner's still okay.
I thought he was questionable. Is he out?
Rotogrinders has him listed as out.
Indeed, he is.
Yeah, so those Magic guys are in play. If you want to really go deep dive in at center, you can consider somebody like Trey Jemison, who could get some run with the Pels being shorthanded. I don't really want to do that because we just don't know how much he's actually going to play. So yeah, not really something I want to do. There's also Karlo Matkovic maybe is his name, but yeah, he's 3K flat for the Pels. Him or Jemison probably will end up getting run. One of them likely will, but it's not like we can feel really good about either of them. All right. Let's wrap this up with our flag plant of the night and our overall strategy.
Yeah, it's pretty stars and scrubsy, obviously, with all the value we have in Giannis up top. You can afford another 1 or 2 stars with him. Towns and Wagner are the ones that stand out. We didn't mention the Norm Powell thing. He's out, and KPJ looks like an okay value at point guard only. The matchup's bad, but still a good per minute guy who gets usage. I think he's a cheapie worth a mention.
Absolutely, he's worth mentioning. I can't believe I forgot to mention him. I think my strategy is similar. It's going to be stars and scrubs. The whole idea is going to be, how do I get different? Right now, as it stands, playing Franz Wagner to close out the slate is different, and that is very shocking to me. While I love Şengün, I think pivoting off of Şengün to somebody like Jalen Williams or finding a way to pay up and get Cat, that could be another way to get a little bit different too, because Şengün is pulling ownership, rightfully so. I love Şengün. But if I can just get a little bit less ownership on another play who projects about as well, if not better, I do have to consider that. I do think there is merit on a big slate like this in fading Giannis. Like, it's not the worst call in the world because there's so many good plays to actually consider. I mean, we have like 6 or 7 guys hovering around the 50-point fantasy projection. I mean, if you can just go stack up, 4 of those guys instead of playing Giannis, it's not the worst thing to do. And then you're eating less of these horribly awful value plays too that could all bust, right? That said, my personal strategy is to build around Giannis. I'm going to play the 2 Caps guys, Ty Jerome and Craig Porter, and I am going to play the Pels, even though it doesn't feel amazing. It just is what it is. They're too shorthanded. Somebody's got to play. All right, that is going to do it for us. Hopefully, we can deliver some good plays on the night, and hopefully this helps you in your process. If anything we said did help, please give us a like on this video and also consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and good luck.